Cheers. How was your travels?
Cheers, man. What are you drinking? Kahlua and Coke.
Jack and Coke?
Oh.
Kahlua and Coke. That sounds
Jack
really
and-
awful.
Sounds like something you drink. It sounds like a good character.
Just
drink,
because I've drunk Kahlua before, you assume that every drink I have is Kahlua and some variant. Kahlua and Coke is a terrible suggestion.
It's because I saw you once drink Kahlua, and also I'm also filling that in with like what I know about you as a person.
Okay,
You know.
but what's the ideological difference between, say, a Baileys and a Kahlua? They're both like cream liqueurs. Are you anti-Baileys?
Yeah, I would be anti-Baileys. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it's not that I'm anti-Baileys. It's just that it's just like a bit weak. It's like if someone ordered.
Well, it's
a
not a
Baileys,
strong drink. Yeah, no.
No, I mean like not. I mean,
From a heteronormative perspective, that doesn't sort of fit with your perceived ideals of masculinity. That's okay. It's brave of you to admit that you couldn't enjoy a weak, creamy drink. It takes all types in 2019, and I'm here to say I support you, Michael.
Look, if someone orders a latte with 2 sugars, I turn my nose up a little bit at them. You know.
And you've got such a huge nose to turn up.
Okay. Well, that was not, my nose in Sri Lanka, man. I tell you what, it doubles in size.
That's why it's so significant.
It's so weird to them. It's
it's just more. It's like a generic snobbery. It's like I'll apply my standards of taste to everything other people do. Be it a double sugar latte, a cocktail I wouldn't drink. You've really expanded the vegetarianism into like a broader mindset where just anything anyone else does that's different is wrong.
I think the term general snob would be aptly applied to me. I think I'm a snob about a lot of things, but not fair. That much, just a little bit.
Not important
about
stuff,
a lot
really.
of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's been going on?
You tell me how your trip was. You've been in Sri Lanka for the past 2 and a bit weeks.
Yeah, it was the best. It was extremely good. We got there are lots of different sides to Sri Lanka. So we spent some time in the mountains. We did some hiking. We went into like a dense city, through markets and then we.
What was that adjective? Did you say dead city or dense city?
Dense. Like a populated city. Went down, spent some time by the beach. We went to an old historic town. It had everything, man. It had everything. I could write a really good tourism ad for Sri Lanka right now.
Is it one of those places which is newly discovered? Like, because I hear people talking about it a bit more. Is it a place that has been found and is as it always was? Or is it a place that's been sort of gentrified a little bit to make it more accessible to like a Western traveller? Like, is it now safer than it was or different?
It's got a pretty interesting history because the British, it's been colonized by the British, the Dutch, the Portuguese at different times.
Huh.
One interesting thing that I learned there is that the only native spice in Sri Lanka is cinnamon. Everything else all the other spices there were brought there by the British when they colonized it. I really struggle with this word. Colonized it.
Just think colonoscopy.
Okay, cool. Thanks. And it was also formerly known as Ceylon until 1970s, maybe.
Right.
So it was only called Sri Lanka in the late 70s. I think that's right. And I wouldn't say it's gentrified. It's
it's just a place that sort of post rename. Do you think it's sort of got people's attention a little bit, and so they've headed over there? Because what was the cause of the break from Ceylon to Sri Lanka? Was that political change, or was that
that was the I don't know, something about the British rule in Sri Lanka, maybe. They've also had a civil war there that's been going on for ages. So I think in like we went and saw some like historic artwork that was tourism ads for from the British to the British, advertising Ceylon as a place to go and relax. So that was from like the 20s and 30s. We sent some postcards off with those old kind of tourism ads. And so I think there was a bit of a spike then to like it was made aware to the world then, and then I think with the civil war in Sri Lanka, tourism maybe died off, and then once the civil war finished in like 2004 or something, and they had a few tsunamis, then tourism has been on the rise. It was also like Lonely Planet's #1 travel destination a couple of years.
Right. Yeah. So it was sort of.
But then they had the bombings.
Right. Yeah. But you didn't feel unsafe anywhere. You've traveled some weird places. Was it on the radar at all with any sort of concerns whatsoever?
No rational concerns. They've got a really large population of, equally it seems, of Muslim, Christian, Hindu, and Buddhist, and you see all of these people walking down the streets, and they're easily identifiable by what they're wearing, and you hear the call to prayer from the Muslims and the Hindus at different times, and it's pretty interesting in that respect. But there was one time, I was going to bring this up because there was one time I was on the beach, and I was relaxing, and this guy he was kind of decked out in the, he was very clearly Muslim, and his wife was in a hijab next to him. And I felt a bit bad for this, but that was the only time I thought, and I knew it was irrational at the time, but my head went to like those shooting when they went to a tourist in somewhere in Europe, maybe Turkey or somewhere, and they shot up some tourists on a beach, and my head went to that place while I was just sitting down there trying to relax, and this guy was like right behind me, and I was like, man, am I just a bit of an asshole for thinking this? And it's just it's clearly irrational.
Yeah.
But I think Ricky Gervais had a bit on this, and he said, he thought he saw someone who looked like a representation of a terrorist or something in the media on his plane, and then he felt really bad about actually ever having that thought. But then I don't know, it's weird. It's weird trying to talk yourself out of those kind of ridiculous. I don't even know if it is ridiculous. I just don't want to I don't want to be racist.
Yeah. I don't think it's.
I'm not externalizing this at all. But
yeah,
apart from now, but I wasn't externalizing it then. I was just having this thought, and I was like, is that just racist? The thing, and I guess it is kind of a form of racism.
Yeah, but it's based on imagery, right? Like it's a mainstream perception, like that has been pushed out there in association with terrorist events, right? You don't see on mainstream TV people dressed like that, just in a Coles commercial. So there's no normalization of that outside of it. So the only frame of reference for your brain to think of, where have I seen this before? The only place that it can pull it out is going to be in those contexts. So I don't think it's. I think by catching yourself in that thought process and then self-analyzing, I think you've sort of shown that you're actively self-critiquing or self-analyzing that thought process in a way that's useful / important. But it is,
and as soon as you go to like an airport, say even, I don't know, Dubai, I mean, and the whole that kind of. We're not used to it that much in where we are in New Zealand or in Australia, but this is like a huge amount of the population that actually dresses like this. So
so you're forced to think about it.
Yeah, but that wasn't. We also, to be fair to me, there was also a kind of a heightened security there after the Easter bombings. So that it's kind of in the back of your mind because there's military police basically wherever you go with AK-47s.
Yeah.
And so it's a constant reminder, but realistically felt completely safe the whole time.
Yeah.
And we actually avoided Colombo entirely.
Is that where the bombings were?
That's where the bombings were, yeah.
Yeah.
But it was a really good trip. I'd really recommend going there.
That's cool. And you saw, I saw you just stumble into elephants and saw some pretty amazing scenery. It was properly picturesque.
It was really good. It's good traveling with Emma because she's really conscious about animal cruelty and stuff. So we didn't want to fall into those touristy kind of. There's lots of elephants and there's a few that are chained up and they're pretty poorly treated. And you see every now and then you'd see an elephant in a creek and there'd be all these tourists around there taking photos, and it was we were conscious to walk right by it, and if we saw any animals chained up we wouldn't give any money or anything. And we went to this national park which was completely wild, like it's a proper national park. We went on safari. All the animals there are there because
free,
that's where they live. There's a shitload of peacocks.
Really?
Everywhere. Peacocks. I've never seen one before.
What? Really? You've never seen a peacock
one
before?
Apart from in the zoo.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah, they got all them tail feathers. What was the sort of general background of most of the tourists that you saw? Was it Americans? Was it Australians? Were you seeing Brits? Did you get a sense of who was going there?
We were very lucky in the sense that tourism there, so we did see a lot of tourists, but tourism there has completely plummeted. So for us as travelers, it was really great because most of the hotels, most of the places that we're staying at, there's maybe another couple out there, but we're the only two couples there. There was basically the story for the whole time. So we didn't see as many tourists as we would have. The tourists that we did see, it's a fairly backpackery place to go, I would say. There's a few surfing spots down on the south. So there's a few. I don't know if I can just notice the Australians more. I did notice hearing the Australian accent quite a lot. But I think it's pretty diverse.
And are they English receptive, or are you sort of nodding and smiling most of your way through?
Yeah, most of the people there learn English in school.
Oh,
so it's tough in certain parts, but by the end of it, like, because they to say yes, Indians do this as well. They kind of wobble their head a little bit, and that means yes, and it's pretty funny trying to get used to that because it kind of looks like a no. And so when you ask them a question, then they'll just move their head to the side, and you're like, what do I? But by the end of it, Emma and I were kind of inadvertently just doing it to ourselves, like with each other. And it's interesting seeing. I was wondering how that. What would you call that? Is that a mnemonic device?
No, it's not a mnemonic device, but it's like it's almost like a cultural tick or something, like a learned gesture in the way that a nod means a yes over here, or the middle finger's rude, or that kind of stuff is. I don't know what you call that category of non-verbal communication.
We walked past the school once, and there was a group of small boys, and they were all doing it. They were all nodding to their teacher like that, and it just made me think how that kind of thing that must be deep in history. Anyway, that's kind of a stupid side note, but
no, it's interesting.
Had a really good trip. I think you should go.
When I have money to travel, I will put it on the list.
When we were catching our Uber back to the airport, the Uber driver, I would put my bags into the back seat. Yeah. Good way to travel in Sri Lanka, actually. Locked in prices. He pulled down the boot and smacked me in the head.
Lucky he didn't have any teeth to knock out.
It really hurt. And he asked me, he was like, I think he didn't know that he did it initially. And then Emma was like, oh my God, are you okay? And then I was just like, yeah, I'm fine. And he was like, oh, sorry. He's like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And I just like completely blew it off. And Emma was like, why didn't you say anything? I was like, because I really didn't want to say anything because I didn't want it to be awkward for him. We had like an hour to drive. And so I just pretended in the back seat of the car. It's probably like tears came out of my head, out of my face. There's this guy, and there's like this egg forming on my head after getting smacked.
Just you didn't want to risk your 5-star rating.
I didn't want him to feel bad. I didn't want the whole trip him looking back and going, "Oh, I'm really sorry about the
about the
smack
concussion
in your head."
Jeez,
that was
that's awkward. Did you didn't see you got relatives over there? Do you have any distant people you could have caught up with?
We do, but it's a little bit complicated, and we didn't end up seeing anyone. But it's a little bit complicated just because my granddad was a bit of a prick to my mum and shit. That whole
Granddad's
thing.
still alive or not?
Yeah, he's still alive. So I could have, but then I would have had to open up that dialogue with him, and Mum was like, I don't know. So we just kind of left it. And I just went around telling everyone that I was half Sri Lankan.
Yeah. So fair enough.
Yeah.
Ooh, welcome to Deep Ford, everybody. Oh, so nice to be back. It's been a little while. It's been a little while. What's this strange thing happening in the background? Oh my gosh. After 122 good old episodes, we've upgraded our theme song just a little bit. Goodbye invitations, goodbye Shack Attack. Thank you so much for all of your years of service, and we encourage you all to go and buy the track.
And please don't sue us.
Please don't sue us. It was lovely of you to be so generous in not suing us for so long, but times have changed, and let's go a little bit bossa for a while. We'll fiddle with it. Give it a listen. See how you feel.
I really like it. I really like the tune. I like the. It's perfectly. I was thinking this the other day that elevator music. People always slag it off. They say this sounds like elevator music. I'm like, elevator music's my favorite genre of music.
Yeah. And I wish, actually, when was the last time you went into an elevator and there was music? Bring it back. Bring back elevator music. If all you're doing is going into elevators and you're standing there with a group of people that you don't know in silence, isn't it better for everyone if there's just a little bit of music in the background? Wouldn't that make 100%. Everyone's life 10% better?
Dude, I am not kidding here. We went to one place in Sri Lanka. We went into an elevator, and I'm not kidding you. They were playing Girl from Ipanema.
Perfect. That's what I want. That's what I want when I go into an elevator.
100%. I'm gonna start a new playlist on Spotify. It's called Elevator Music, and it's gonna be full of all my cool favorite kids. And most played tracks.
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, come along for the ride with us. It's gonna be good. Sitting through the internet with me this week, suntanned and jet lagged, Michael. Say hi, Michael.
Hey, Michael.
Well done. And my net's
that's your thing. Sorry.
Yeah. Fuck it. You know who I am. What are we talking about this week?
Simulation theory, I believe.
Do it. Give me the. Just let's get going. Pull this trigger.
So I've been thinking about a lot about this lately. So I've been thinking a little about this lately. It's a theory proposed by a Swedish philosopher by the name of Nick Bostrom, in 2003, in which he speculates that I've actually got it right here in front of me, the actual theory. But he basically speculates.
Fucking research to this shit. You got a
binder. I did. I'm going to get the actual. So he argues that at least one of the following propositions is true. Okay, so I'll get into the argument for simulation theory in a bit, but this is the original simulation argument.
Proposition, yeah.
So he argues that at least one of the following propositions is true. 1, the human species is very likely to go extinct before reaching a post-human stage. 2, any post-human civilization is extremely unlikely to run a significant number of simulations of their evolutionary history or variations thereof. And 3, we are almost certainly living in a computer simulation. So he's saying that he's not saying all of those are true. He's saying at least one of those is very likely to be true.
Can you go back over them again for me? So 1, it's the humans go extinct before evolutionarily becoming post-human.
Yeah, he calls that technologically mature.
So post-human defined as like cyborg, or in like genetically distinguishable due to either time or editing.
I would say post-human is indistinguishable from AI, humans from AI.
Okay, so explicitly technological.
Yes. Okay. The second one is that basically the second one is that he's saying that if a civilization has gotten to a post-human stage technologically, that they're actually probably uninterested in actually doing this.
They're actually running uninterested in simulating earlier versions of themselves?
Yes.
Okay. I don't quite understand the import of that yet, but go on to the third one.
And then the third one is we are almost certainly living in a computer simulation.
Okay. So explain to me how one of these is... Or explain to me the interrelationship of those three thoughts and why one of them has to be true.
Well, as I understand it, so he gives about a 20% chance that I think he's actually increased that lately, but he gives a pretty high percentage chance that we are actually living in a simulation. Now, because if you think about it, if a civilization gets to a point where they are post-human technologically, and Elon Musk has talked about this before. He said, 40 years ago we had Pong. If you like fast track to today, we've got, high resolution games. We've done that in 40 years. If technology is moving exponentially, we can probably imagine, probably sooner than we are anticipating, having being capable of running simulations that have their own consciousness in the not too distant future. And if that's the case, the likelihood that we are living in a simulation is pretty high, because you can also have, if you're getting to a point where you're creating simulations of people that have their own consciousness, then it's conceivable that those conscious beings that you have simulated or created in a simulation could then also create their own simulation. And if the technology, if in the first instance the organic race, I don't know what you would call that, the organic race gets to a point where they can do that, you'd think that it would proliferate through the entire universe, or it would be basically an infinitesimal, what's the word there?
As in tiny or huge?
Huge. It would go on for infinity.
Infinitesimal
it could
is
theoretically
tiny.
go. Okay, then the opposite of that. It would be. It could go on forever and ever and ever. So the likelihood.
So sorry, just to be clear, before you draw that conclusion, you're talking about the idea that in a world which has become post-human with the technological ability to simulate conscious AIs, within the conscious simulation, within the AI simulations, those simulated AIs could then also themselves reach a level of technological proficiency to then, like Turtles all the way down, like Inception level. Every universe has a tiny simulated universe inside it. And so you're saying that because we can foresee in our world a future in which simulation of consciousness and universes becomes possible in the distant future, that therefore the likelihood is that our world itself is just one chain in an infinite link of simulations all the way stretching above us. Is that right?
That's how I see it. I'm not sure if he necessarily argues that in this paper. The way I see it is that the chance for life evolving to a point where I can Skype you right now is so small, so infinitesimal, Nick.
Well done.
That means really small.
Thank you.
It's so small and so unlikely and so unbelievable, really, if you think about it. It's fucking weird. Everyday life is so weird. But if the simulation theory actually kind of solves that unbelievable fact, because it basically, life really needs to only evolve once to a post-human
But how is that
stage.
different to the argument that our life is just the one time that worked, right? Like, how many we have no. Can't you just say that there are, an infinite number of big bangs previous to ours and infinite number of parallel worlds in which the basic fundamental properties of physics were slightly different and thus nothing ever happened? Like, what's the rationale between one unlikeliness, which is that life evolved in this one that we're conscious and able to experience it, versus life, like the one tiny little chance that it simulated version happens,
I've thought about that a lot, but I guess what it does is it basically increases the likelihood of you waking up in a like, even if it is a simulation, it basically increases the chance that you could wake up with consciousness. That's basically what it does.
Wait. So like Matrix style. As in, you're saying there's a likelihood you can get out of the simulation. Is that what you're saying?
No. I'm saying you are arguing that what's the difference in believing that we're in a simulation if the simulation had to evolve organically anyway, right?
Yeah, that wasn't explicitly my point, but I agree with it. Continue.
So I'm saying that if the simulation theory is true, then basically the number of conscious beings in the universe goes up. Do you know what I mean?
So you're saying if you consider that our life is simulated and that there are universes above ours with consciousness, it is good to think, or nice to think, that there are more conscious beings in the world. And in the typically organic view of the universe, we're the only consciousness that we know of. And so yours is like a quantity argument where, isn't it interesting or like conceptually reassuring to think there's other consciousnesses around us?
Yeah.
Isn't that just an argument for religion?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it does give a creator, in a sense.
It gives a creator, it gives an omniscient, hyper-level viewing. It gives someone who's around us with consciousness. It's a technological substitution for God, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But, I mean, I don't think it's as comforting.
You don't think it's as comforting as God?
No.
In the sense that there's no implied afterlife.
I've been properly thinking about this for, the last few months, and I'm like truly trying to work out if it's true. Like, I think there's at this point I'm on the fence, as to whether or not I believe this or not, which is pretty astounding. Well, maybe not for someone like me, but it's pretty astounding. I'm pretty astounded that I can get to a point, but I'm not actually sure. I'm like pretty convinced. I don't attach, when I think about it, I think the benevolence is removed, as in the
benevolence
about, like,
of a god versus a simulation.
Yeah, and it feels more sterile and, like almost like a laboratory kind of. That's how it makes me feel. If I start to believe it, I feel, and that's the other question. Like, does it matter?
Well, yeah, I suppose at the end of the day, if it's an argument brought to religious discussion, but at the end of the day, as long as it's not affecting your morality in the way that you treat other people, then sure. Like, I don't see how fundamentally it really changes anyone's day-to-day life, thinking you're in a simulation, unless it becomes to a point of detachment for you where you start to lose grip with reality. And but beyond that, like, it's that's not me dismissing the idea, because it is, like I said, really interesting. But I don't see the implication of it in a practical sense.
Well, you don't think? What if we learned it for a fact? That would change.
How do you learn it for a fact?
Yeah, true.
A universal, worldwide, like, error message pops up, and everyone sort of has a verifiable, like, almost like alien activity or something, right? Where every human being experiences the same thing simultaneously or whatever.
Well, I mean, it's kind of the fun and the conspiracy theory side of this theory is, if you go, I went on Reddit, and obviously it's just like full of this shit, and people trying to work out. I think one subreddit that I read was, if simulation theory is a fact, what would we look back at in hindsight that we would say it was right there in front of us, that it was obvious? And obviously people are saying, like, because it's basically the Matrix. We're basically talking about the Matrix kind of question. And people are saying, like, deja vu is a big one that people cite as a, I mean, this is getting kind of a wishy-washy area. What was another one?
Isn't it telling that the indicators of this concept being true are the indicators that the fiction of the film tells you is an indicator of it? Do you know what I mean? Like,
well, that's on Reddit.
Sure, but if does this what did you say his name was? Bostrom. Does he have any suggestion as to whether or not it's verifiable? Does he say explicitly it'll never be verifiable?
Let me check here. So I've just got 15 irrefutable reasons why we might be living in a simulation. I love it. It says
really going deep.
Irrefutable and then might in the same sentence.
Yeah, that's very funny.
There's one called the Mandela effect.
Oh, I've heard about this. Yeah, it's when there's a shared sort of cultural event that everyone thinks happened but didn't happen. Yeah.
So some people claim to remember TV coverage of Nelson Mandela's death in the 1980s, even though he actually died in 2013. The Mandela effect is therefore supposedly proof that whatever is in charge of our simulation is changing the past. Yeah.
There was also, I feel like I might have that on our, we have a shared Deep Thought notes, and I feel like I might have actually put that down there as something that was of curious and worthy discussion. But yeah, and that's like also I forget the other examples they gave, but like people misremembering the lyrics to songs and being really confident that like something was one thing and then it turns out it's not.
I mean, all this stuff like deja vu and stuff, it's all just like people not realizing the incredible fallibility of their mind. Really, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And dreams as well. I mean, look, you can have a field day. I mean, that's always a problem. If you start with the conclusion, you can find anything to fill it.
Yeah.
You can find evidence for anything. And that's, I don't know, I find that's a little bit of fun.
It is interesting to consider, particularly when you extrapolate it to a multiple levels deep kind of thing. So can you, what's his name? Bolstrom?
Sure.
In his research, how does he get to the conclusion that it is most likely that it's a simulation and not, he says one of these three is going to be true, right? And getting post-human, why does he think we're not going to get to post-human?
Because we kill ourselves.
Okay. So if that's likely, then why is it the case that some organic level got to that point where they could reach that simulation thing above us to create us?
Well, I think that's why he's giving he's basically laying out three options, three paths that a civilization could have taken. Either they blow themselves up, either they have no interest in doing that, or they do.
Okay. I hadn't
There's
quite
formulas
got the
here.
third one.
I can't really interpret them.
Oh yeah. So they blow themselves up. They're interested in it, or they're not interested in it. Yeah, that's actually quite a. I mean, that covers all the bases, doesn't it?
Yeah.
They die, they do it, or they don't do it. I'm not. I'm sure that there's much more depth into how he's explained it, but it's quite funny that at the top level, it's like, well, yep, that's your choices, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess those are the choices.
Yeah.
He just pointed them out. There's obviously like heaps that I'm not.
Yeah, totally. No,
really
I'm not
relaying very well.
I'm not expecting you to go into the science of it, but I was just curious whether or not he had sort of an explanation for how he got to that final conclusion, I suppose.
Well, I think the argument is sound that if a civilization has somewhere else in the universe has gotten to a point where they can create a simulation as good as what we are seeing right now, then the odds are pretty high that we are living in one. If that has happened once, I mean, that in itself is quite a big leap, obviously. But if that has happened once, and also the fact that the fact that we are having the conversation or having that discussion is almost proof.
No, it's not. The fact that we can think of things which don't exist. You can think of so many other ways that the world could be.
The fact that our evolution our technological evolution has taken has taken us to the point where we can create other simulations already now, even if they are not all that realistic.
Or conscious. We haven't crossed the consciousness threshold.
Sure. Maybe that is the path that all life takes if it's created everywhere. I mean, does evolution
the path
really
heads
only
towards
goes
being
forward?
able to create consciousness?
Well, if nothing stands in its way, if it doesn't kill itself, then technology only goes forward. So I don't know. I need to stop thinking.
That's
put on the Family Guy once in a while.
Please don't watch Family Guy, or as the Family Guy. I need to put on the Family Guy once in a while. I don't know why that made me laugh so much.
I don't know either. Also, what's wrong with Family Guy?
Family Guy is not. It doesn't matter. It's like a. You remember the South Park criticism of it, right? It's references, it's not jokes. It's like manatee.
Every time I watch it, I've laughed. Every single time.
Every
time I watch an episode, doesn't matter. It's funny.
Okay. Wow.
Anyway, that feud's pretty funny.
What? The
South Park Family Guy feud is pretty funny.
Right. Yeah. I don't know how intense that is, but yeah, I forget what my point was now.
You're talking about Peter Griffin.
Yeah, fighting a chicken. Right. All consciousness ends up in creating technological AI. Yeah, I think surely there are. It's an impossible hypothetical, but technology. I don't know that it's necessarily been proven, right? That our technology has the capacity to mimic consciousness, right? Like that's a concept of, like, we can talk about the advancement of technology and that, becomes, increasing, teraflops of speed and, processes per second and that sort of stuff. But is it therefore guaranteed that at a certain threshold we'll reach a point in which that is consciousness? Or is that a leap? Because I think I'm open to the idea that
it's likely. We don't know what consciousness is. We don't know what it is.
That's what I'm kind of getting at. Is not in a spiritual sense, but maybe. At what point do we know a thing is conscious, and at what point can we verify that we've created something which is conscious, like a technological level?
Yeah.
If all of our perception is subjective as human beings, right? We can't get into the head of the thing that we've created to know whether or not it is or isn't conscious. So how do we really know whether or not we get to even at an infinite timeline to get to an infinite level of processing power? Do we know that the thing that we've created is equivalent to consciousness in the way that we as humans experience consciousness?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it's conceivable that we could get to that point, even if it's not now.
I mean, the flip side, the devil's advocate to what I just posited, is that our understanding of what consciousness is, if we were in a simulation, may be a flawed or limited version of the consciousness of the organic beings at a level above us.
Well, that's it, man.
And so maybe actually what we think of as free will and consciousness is not actually a true reality in the real world, wherever that is.
Yeah, and there's thinking about a concept like infinity. I mean, it's fun to put your brain through that test because your brain just doesn't get it. We just cannot. I cannot grasp. No one can grasp it.
Yeah, for me, the concept of infinity ends at around like 1 trillion. Like anything beyond that, it just it just ends, right? You can't like I can sort of I can follow the conceptual steps. Like, okay, there's 1 million people in this country, and then there's 1 billion people, and 8 billion people on the earth, and then you sort of get out there and it becomes like billions of stars, and then there's like $1 trillion, and then beyond that it just sort of like loses frame of reference, right? So infinity for me is effectively like 1 quadrillion. Anything above a quadrillion is just infinity to me, right?
Yeah, I'm like 50,000 really. That's what I got.
Like a football stadium.
Yeah.
If you pack out the MCG,
that,
anything beyond that's infinity.
Yeah. And, you know...
MCG is probably more than 50,000. Don't write me.
Realizing your brain recognizing that the limitations that it has conceptually is funny. I mean, yeah. Also, the fact that we just go to sleep, we don't have consciousness for like a third of the day.
A third of our life, yeah, we don't experience. Yeah, it's so weird to think of programming a consciousness which turns off all the time. It's so strange.
I mean, it does. Yeah, if you are working backwards, there's plenty of stuff there to fill it in with. You know, stuff that kind of seems like it's if you were programming a conscious being, or even if you were programming life in any way, that, I mean, that's what would happen. But I mean, if you think of like history, like your concept of history, I mean, past a certain point where we have no, you know, anecdotal evidence, potentially our human consciousness could have just started at a certain point in history, and we would have just been, you know, we could have had the history of humankind just in our consciousness, uploaded into our consciousness and starting from a certain point.
Well,
I've lost it.
There's an interesting point there, which is not what you said, but the idea...
You made a really interesting point there, accidentally.
No, it's true. The idea that at some point a creature that was not a human was born or ate meat or reached a point in which there was a creature, a human, that became the first human with consciousness. Do you know what I mean? There was one, right? And that's the biological argument, you know, obviously not the simulated argument. But isn't it so interesting to think? And it's very strange, actually, that you brought that up about the history as well, because I've had this note on our notes for a while now, which is, how do we know that cavemen discovered fire? How do we know that cavemen discovered fire? No one's telling the story of it, right?
Right.
No one. Where does this knowledge come from? Do we have evidence that they were lighting fires? Do we know from historical records?
Well,
where does
just
information
because we just
from
have
so
it,
far?
and we just assume that they did it. They started it.
It's a genuine question. It's not a cynical one. It's like, how do we actually know that they did this?
But fire would have always existed.
Fire existed before they did, but how do we know that they
harvested?
Yeah, I don't know. Got to the point where they could control it or utilized it, right?
Yeah, that's. I mean, well, is that like an article?
It's not an article. No, it was a thought I'd had, which, yeah. Because once you go back so far, as you say, things you lose cultural. Like it's not passed down through culture anymore after a certain limit. We only have a very, very slim picture of what happened 5,000 years ago, let alone 40,000 years ago. So how do we know that far back? Is it truly, you know, scientific discovery that's led to us making that conclusion? We've found like the embers in a cave somewhere with an old proto-human, or is it? I'm not suggesting there's that it's not the case that they did. I'm just asking the question of where does that information come from?
Yeah, I do. I love thinking about this stuff, and I think that if we learnt that we were in a simulation, I would be depressed. But then I think, you know, part of me thinks, why am I latching onto this so much? If I started talking to my dad about this, or my high school priest, / best friend, they would say that I'm really searching for God. That's what they would say. And maybe
is that why you would be depressed by the confirmation that is that because when you talk about it, you sound enthused by the idea, but is it actually like if you found out that this was the truth, or if you settled on this idea, would you feel like why would it be depressing to you? Because I thought when you were saying earlier that it would mean confirmation of other levels of consciousness out in the universe, you were saying that like it was a positive thing.
Because it would, even though it would lessen the value for me of life.
Oh, so that feels different to where you started with. Has that developed over our conversation?
It's probably.
I just came across
shooting out all these different thoughts that are.
I just thought you were enthused about it. That's all. But
I'm enthused. I'm enthused by the idea. I'm enthused by the idea, but
you'd be depressed if it was true.
I could be enthused about the prospect of aliens, but if I was actually face to face to one, I'd probably shit myself.
Yeah, because you're a racist.
Because I'm a interspecialist.
So what is it so the idea that you're less special, is that what you're saying? Like the idea that consciousness has less value?
I think it would.
But I mean, there's so many other conscious animals in the world. Do you feel less special because there's like koalas?
Yes, actually. I don't know. I've got a lot of thoughts on this, and I'm just excited by the idea that there's something else out there. But then I'm also excited. It's the same excitement that I had when I first realized or first came to the conclusion that there was no God after believing in God. When I abandoned the idea of God properly to myself, I was like filled with excitement. Because I don't know, I felt like everything was more. I felt like everything was more special. That we had just evolved from single-celled organisms, and that this was a complete fluke of nature. But then also, maybe because there's such a huge amount of space in the universe that I can't grasp in my head, that there's just things out there that I just don't know and will probably never know. And MH370, I'm still obsessed with that. Like, I don't know, like when those types of things, the mystery and of the universe and the mystery of anything, I just get really excited by it, but I'm not necessarily thrilled about it.
Well, I'm glad that you can hold both of those thoughts simultaneously. You can be enthused and depressed at the same time.
Yeah, I'm a consummate nihilist.
You're a glass half full kind of guy who just keeps tipping the glass out. Cool. Should we do a Segi?
Yeah. So that was a pretty piss poor explanation of the thing from me.
A leaping off point for interesting chit chat. How about some science news?
Oh, fuck yes, dude.
Play the jingle! I'm going to do one where I don't peek. Play the jingle! I don't think that was any better. Anyway, we'll play the jingle. We'll play it twice.
Include all that.
It's that time. Time for science news. Okay.
What do you got for me, baby?
Speaking of, I've got a lovely article here on the website, vox.com. The title is Study, : Many of the oldest people in the world may not be as old as we think. A new paper has explored what supercentenarians, I don't know how to emphasize those syllables. A new paper explores what they have in common. It turns out bad record keeping. So, for ages, people have been obsessed by long life, right? The super elderly. How do people get to age 100, 110 years old? Why do some areas like Okinawa in Japan or Sardinia in Italy, why are there so many supercentenarians in these places while other regions don't have people living as long? Is it genetics? Is it diet? Is it environment? Are people going for long walks at dawn? Basically, a study has gone in and said it's none of the above. It is basically the majority of supercentenarians, people who've reached 110, the majority of them in the United States are engaged in intentional or unintentional exaggeration.
What?
And it's due to the state of record keeping. The idea being that the reliable, predictable, accurate state record keeping, they've been introduced in different places at different times with different levels of quality. And a century ago, lots of places didn't have good record keeping. So basically, this study went through and it looked at birth certificates introduction in various locations and found that when they introduced an actual birth certificate system and started verifying people's ages with a piece of paper which says, this is the date that you were born, it's associated with between a 69 and 82% fall in the number of supercentenarian records. I.e., once you start recording when people were born, no one starts hitting 110 years old anymore.
Really?
Which suggests that, like, out of every 10 super old people, 7 or 8 of them are younger than that, but don't know it because of bad record keeping. So it could be, it doesn't mean they're necessarily lying. It could be that they lost track of their age a long time ago. They double counted some years. They were told the wrong birth year by parents or that sort of thing. But basically, due to poor accounting, effectively, people are not quite as old as they say they are. And so a lot of the studies that have been conducted on these people trying to work out the secrets of old age, the genetic testing, the diet surveys, are you smoking, are you drinking? All of these studies may be based on like a false user base. They're not accurate because the people are not as old as they say they are. And that's, it just, what a strange sort of quirk of the scientific method, that this assumption that everyone was basing their studies on is flawed, that these people are the actual age that they said they were.
Yeah, it's like Jenga, isn't it?
It's like Jenga. Oh yeah, you pull a brick out and suddenly the whole tower falls. There's another thing. So this is the second kind of controversial side of the study. So the paper then went and looked at Italy and Japan, where there were also meant to be clusters of these really old people. Italy keeps better vital statistics than the US did, and has had that for hundreds of years. And yet in Italy, there are clusters of the country where there are lots of these supercentenarians. Are these people for real, was kind of the question. And his analysis was not. And his conclusion there is that even with accurate records, he started noticing that the parts of Italy that had the most 110-year-olds overall had higher crime rates and lower life expectancy. So why is it that an area that has low life expectancy is also producing this disproportionate amount of really old people? And the same thing happened in Japan. And the paper basically puts this, proposal forward to say that given how unlikely it is that living in a high crime, low life expectancy area is the thing that makes it likeliest for people to reach 110, the logical conclusion is that many, if not most, of those people in those areas are engaged in fraud or exaggeration. Whether it's reporting area, right, whether it's pension fraud, and they're trying to like claim they're still alive for pension benefits, claiming the identity of like an older parent or sibling, and basically saying that, again, even with old records, these ones have proven problematic.
That's amazing.
Basically, the upshot has been the findings have resulted in serious questions about the validity of an extensive body of research about age populations, life expectancy, individuals, the biomarkers, the habits, the diets that are useful. They're probably all worthless because most of the sample was not as old as we thought they were.
That's really funny and kind of disappointing in a weird way.
I'm sorry that this has been an episode of disappointment for you. The good thing is that if we're simulated, none of their lives really mattered, so that's fine.
Fuck, I'm going to be a really bad father.
I don't think that's true.
Well, I mean, there's no way.
Instilling the search and curiosity.
There's no way I could look into my child's eyes and tell them. I couldn't make up a story, I don't think. I couldn't make up a story. I couldn't tell them that there's a God. I couldn't tell them there's an afterlife. I couldn't tell them that the reason that Mummy's not around anymore is because she met some Spanish guy.
But you can withhold information. You don't have to like just throw that stuff out there. It's only if they ask those questions, and they're not going to say, "Daddy, am I in a computer?" That's not going to come up for a while.
Yeah, but you can put 2 drinks in me, and I'll spill the beans.
You start talking about it anyway.
And it's pretty likely that I'll be 2 drinks in most of the time.
I don't believe you. Oh, well, if you've enjoyed this kind of thing, thank you so much for coming along. And I hope that it made your day better. And I hope that you can share that good vibes with the people around you to make the world a better place. And if you'd like to join us for more Deep Thoughts, you can do it at facebook.com/Deep Thought. You can do it at twitter.com/Deep Thought for notifications about when an episode goes up. You can find us at deepthought.podbean.com. You can send your questions and topics to deepthought@gmail.com. And you can jump into iTunes and just give us an old rating, and we'll feel better for it, and you'll feel better for it. So why not get a hit of dopamine today?
I might do that.
All right. Speaking of mail, let's wrap this up with a mailbag, maybe. Mailbag is the weekly mailbag. Deep Thoughts mailbag. One email here this week from someone named Steve Alinier. Steve says, "Dear Deep Thinkers, here's a list of the top 10 Damons. Damon Wayans Jr., Damon Albarn, Damon Douglas, Damon Dash, Dr. Damon Jones, Damon Stoudemire, Damon Hill, Damon Pampolina, Damon Gupton, and the actor Carl Urban born Damon Nico. How good is The Boys? Seriously, please don't fact check the list. With love and squalor, Steve." 2 kisses. Thank you for your email, Steve. I appreciate the support.
Yeah, thanks.
In response, I believe, to my suggestion that my pimp name when I go on the run be Damon K. Star, which was poo-pooed by one of the members of the podcast team as being an unlikely name. But as we've all seen, a very popular name, lots of famous people. Again, Damon Lindelof left off that list. Damon Harriman left off that list. There's dozens of them out there, and I think a perfectly valid name for someone to choose when on the run.
Yeah, so I didn't realize that that had any context whatsoever, and I was just like listening to that list, and I was like, I mean, cool list, bro, but why?
But it's just nice to know that the listeners out there back me up and my my new farm brothel out in the Queensland wilds. So,
did I poo-poo that? I think Damon K. Star's a pretty.
I think
good
you were
name.
on board with it by the end, but you were skeptical that it was just a common Australian encounter.
Yeah. Okay.
He says, "How good is The Boys?" The Boys is a really good show. I like The Boys a lot. It's really fucked up.
Do we know this person?
Yeah, his name's Steve Alanier.
Yeah,
I think it's French.
I don't know any Steve Alanier.
I don't know him either, but I'm delighted.
Really?
Yeah, the boys. Yeah, no, I don't know.
You know what this means?
We made it, Nick. Guys. We did it. We've officially we hit one fan who does not
Someone that we didn't know.
Someone.
Holy shit!
Play the music. Play the music.
Nice.
All the balloons are flat.
Oh.
All the balloons are flat.
Wow, that's pretty good.
That's pretty
I'm
good.
genuinely chuffed with that. Thank you. What was it? Steve Alanier. Steve Bolognese. Steve Bolognese. Thank you.
The Boys is very good. Have you watched The Boys? You won't watch The Boys because it's got superheroes in it, but it's about fucked up superheroes. Does that make it any more interesting?
No, because I'm not 12. But
a 12-year-old should not be watching that show. Steve, right now, he's laughing. He's like, oh, Michael, you sound like a fucking idiot.
Do you think... Wait, serious question now. Serious time, Nick. Mailbag's over. Serious time.
Mailbag's over. Put the envelopes down.
The digital envelopes. Actually... No.
You can't do that. You can't call serious time. You're not allowed to like ring that bell and then just like put the gong back down. I'm sorry. It's now serious time, Michael. We're in serious time. You've got to bring something to the table.
All right. I'll bring something else to the table. But it wasn't the thing that I originally thought of. I'm keen for this Dragon's Den episode. I've been coming up with heaps of inventions.
This is if you're intending this to be in the podcast. This is I suppose a free tease for an upcoming episode, in which we will be Dragon's Denning. We'll be Dragon's Denning. We'll be pitching our great ideas to each other, looking for investment from you and the audience, just to kick off our Indiegogos.
Yeah.
So yes, what was your point here? Just that you're looking forward to it?
No, I was just looking forward to it. I've been thinking about, various different types of inventions. I'm thinking outside the box pretty heavily on this one.
Is it a new kind of box?
I got really excited.
It's got no walls.
Yeah. I've been thinking outside the box, where the box is levitating.
Ooh, I'm very excited.
And there's also 3D. Yeah. And has
what kind of
curved
boxes
edges.
have you ever encountered which are not 3D?
Microsoft.
I'm thinking outside the box here. It's a 2-dimensional box. It's a drawing of a box. You can look at it. You can carry it around with you. It doesn't hold any of the benefits of boxes in a traditional sense, but it's got a certain aesthetic value which is very hard to ignore.
You could make the argument that thinking inside the box would be thinking outside the box.
We should. It's insidethebox.com. Please go there and pledge your patronage for our weekly subscription of good ideas. And we'll be back next time with the Dragon's Den.
All right. Emma's making ravioli.
Oh, what flavor?
Sage butter.
Oh, what's inside it?
No.
Potato.
No. Oh, I don't know what's inside it. I would guess. Well, my fave is spinach and ricotta.
Spinach and ricotta.
Is this your John Lennon impression? John Lennon asking what's for dinner.
John Lennon asking
for
about
dinner,
the contents of
Yoko?
ravioli.
As if Yoko's making ravioli.
Sage butter.
There's butter. You got any chestnuts in there, Yoko?
Does it have rosemary?
What did we have yesterday? Oh, that's a good idea for a song, actually. Because of the song.
Make sure it's al dente.
Al dente, Yoko. Do you have that in Japan? They probably do.
Don't use the sieve.
Things John Lennon definitely never said. New segment. Should that be a new segment?
Things John Lennon never said.
Are you trying to think of things that John Lennon never said?
My iPhones run flat pole.
Oh, because he died before iPhones.
Yeah,
nice
one. Easy one.
Have you seen Toy Story
I'm gonna win.
4? It's magnificent.
Yeah, I'm going for technical points here. I don't want just original sentences that he could have seen in the day. I'm going to win on technicalities by only listing things that happened after he died.
Oh, brilliant.
Oh, good.